The Pentagon under Pete Hegseth has announced new restrictions. Reports indicate that Pete Hegseth spends quite a lot, if not half of his time, a plurality or a majority of his time, maybe even a majority, looking around trying to find leaks at the Pentagon, looking under looking under the rug, looking between the couch cushions, looking under the desks and the chairs and the air vents, anywhere he can for a leak. The tactics that could be used is varied. Of course, interviews with people, asking them about potential leaks. I remember Mark Zuckerberg, or one of the big tech dominants, putting little typos in different press releases and sending them out to try to catch people. I'm sure there is a lot of Tom and Jerry-esque hijinks between Pete Hegseth, of course, representing the spiritual Tom here, and the leakers, which representing the many spiritual Jerrys running around avoiding said Tom, also known as Hegseth. But he spends a very large portion of his time doing this. And of course, this process is not helped by the fact that journalists love leakers. They love leakers because they give them exclusive stories. They give them exclusive stories that they can bring to the American people. And then the American people read them. And then they get readership. Then they get people who buy their magazines, get people who buy their papers, who subscribe to their digital newsletter, or watch their programming. And of course, there is the individual journalistic inclination, need, desire to report important information of historic significance. And so when you talk about something, say, like a report indicating that the obliteration of Iran's nuclear program might have actually been something that set it back 6 months to a year, maybe 2 years. But when you talk about, the uranium stockpiles being moved around, there's information that the public was not privy to, that a journalist, now being leaked information, believes that is of importance to them, that maybe they should be privy to, if they were to decide whether the president is doing a good job in foreign affairs and using the taxpayer money and resources given to them by the people in order to eke out their interests, which is the job of the president of the United States on the foreign policy scene, is to seek out the interests of the American people on the global stage. That interest, of course, being global stability, stable trade routes, preventing any type of global health crisis or another pandemic. You get the idea. So that's the job of the journalist. Now, the job of the Pentagon is to keep what's classified and keep it away from the journalist if it could mean negative national security implications, i.e., knowledge that we have an operation, a Central Intelligence Agency operation in Siberia, or knowledge that we are trying to assassinate some sort of arms dealer that is facilitating the Rapid Support Forces, Hetmetis, RSF in Sudan. Some information of an imminent operation that could be of some national security importance, or an ongoing operation that we want to continue to sustain. For example, let's say that we wanted to do a series of airstrikes in a country using aircraft manned by American personnel. We would have an interest in keeping that secret because we wouldn't want that enemy to know about it in advance, get their air defense systems in place, shoot down aircraft, and not only costing us millions to billions of dollars in equipment, but also the lives of American servicemen. That is why you wouldn't, in that scenario, want to accidentally butt dial a American reporter into the group chat where you're discussing it, or in Pete Hegseth's case, send that information to your family, which is the same thing that John Bolton was just indicted over, by the way. Sending classified information to members of his family. The only difference being, of course, the hacking done by the Iranians, gaining them that information. But hey, at least Hegseth's wife was not hacked by the Iranians. Maybe it would be a different outcome if she was. Anyway, the new reporting restrictions is to deal with these pesky reporters doing their job, reporting the news and information that's important to civil discourse and civil society and the checks and balances and all other types of liberal hootenanny that those gays up in Washington, D.C. have been pushing on us. Now, Hegseth's solution to the problem of these snooping journalists is a new standard for reporting restrictions. Now, this new standard is essentially, to put it succinctly, if you want to release information from the Pentagon in relation to national security, or really anything from your Pentagon office whatsoever, it must be pre-checked by the Pentagon and pre-screened before being pre-approved. And elsewise, outside of that screening, everything else should just be pre-prepared Pentagon press releases that they put out, essentially demanding that news agencies become stenographers for the Pentagon, that they just republish the reports that they put out of events that happened and never cover something if not given explicit permission beforehand by the Pentagon. So say that a officer came and reported a series of abuse scandals inside the Pentagon that the Pentagon does not want covered. You are not, if you sign this pledge, you are not allowed to cover that, to hint at it, to discuss it. And no matter how much investigation you can do investigation that proves that Pete Hegseth is a serial abuser of staff at the Pentagon and that it doesn't endanger national security at all to report that Pete Hegseth regularly beats his staff or is promiscuous towards the women forcefully in a manner that is unbecoming of a man of his stature. And I mean the stature of the role, not the actual stature of the man. So that would not be allowed to be released. If there was a report given by an officer that the defense secretary is a drunkard and he's constantly making decisions while intoxicated, that would not be allowed to be released. If there was information that the United States government was considering an illegal invasion of another country for reasons the vast majority of the American public did not support, they would not be allowed to report that. They would only be allowed to report what is explicitly approved beforehand by the Defense Department. Leading U.S. outlets have rejected a new Pentagon policy that bars journalists from the building unless they only report information that has been officially authorized by the Defense Department. Major outlets, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, and CNN, have said they will not agree to the new guidelines, citing concerns it could severely undermine press freedom. The BBC will not sign up to the new rules either. Reporters who do not sign the policy by 1700 hours EDT on Tuesday, so that means the day that's already passed, must turn in their media credentials and clear out their Pentagon facilities. Now look, Hegseth says that Pentagon access is a privilege, not a right. But currently, there is only one news organization that has currently agreed to it, this privilege. And that is One America News. I swear to God, everyone else said no, including CNN, ABC, NBC, CBS, Reuters, the Associated Press, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Atlantics, Newsmax, right-wing Newsmax, NPR, the Wall Street Journal, Axios, The Hill, Politico, The Guardian, and Pete Hegseth's alma mater, one of the co-hosts for Fox and Friends, Fox News. Fox News, Pete Hegseth's own network, says that these Pentagon restrictions are too overbearing and ties the hands of the press and is against the First Amendment, his own alma mater. Look, it is one thing for Pete Hegseth on his side to go after leaks, fire people who leak, try to find out who's doing the leaks, try to aggressively make new policies internally to try to go against leaks. But when you start telling the media that they have to be the stenographers for the State Department because you cannot properly manage your staff, you cannot properly manage the people under you, and you are acting extremely paranoid in the way you engage with the press, the Pentagon's ability to quickly engage with the world, communicate with the world, and get their news to the press through the Pentagon press pool is useful. And they are pulling back on that power, pulling back on the power of the Pentagon to communicate with the public, to use that public policy making, to use that public image to a real end. They wanted to warn the American public about a national security threat, about something of real importance. They have to now go out there and find another way to communicate them, call them, do that. They can't communicate with them as embedded, not as quickly. And the reason why is because they will not act as stenographers. As stenographers. And we're not just talking CNN. We're talking Newsmax. We're talking Fox News. The only reason why OAN agreed is they knew no one else would. And therefore, by showing loyalty in advance to the government, they can get to the head of the line when it comes to interviews and the head of the line when it comes to breaking stories. And so that they're willing to sell out this standard, this news organization, in order to get ahead of the cut, choosing their own bottom dollar over the press freedom of the country. Which I think, and as far as I'm concerned, means everybody who's working at the outlet should turn in the journalism card. They've had one. Either way, though, the fact that it's so overwhelming, so many of these news organizations said no. But Pete Hegseth is sticking to his guns. He's not backing off of it. I don't know if that will change with time, especially if this gets more coverage, or especially if they need to quickly communicate with the press and they find themselves now a little bit more distant from the press than they rather would be. Either way, this is embarrassing for the Pentagon. This is embarrassing for the press corps that is having to entertain this nonsense. And the longer this goes on, the worse the Pentagon will be crippled when it comes to its ability to communicate with the public quickly.